Northern Power Women podcast. For your career and your life, no matter what business you're in.
Hello, happy autumn, and welcome to episode 28 of the Northern Power Women podcast. The secret is out. The North is the best place to work. I'm Sam Walker, and this month we are live at the Magna Centre in Rotherham to take part in the Northern Powerhouse Convention. And we discussed how Brexit could be an incredible opportunity for the North, whether the North-South divide is just a state of mind, and why the North's the best place to work, and whether HS2 should be shuffled off into the sidings.
Please do not let us kick this into the long grass. We have been talking about this for too long, and it is something that just has to happen.
The big interview is with the fantastic Ruth Ibegbuna, former CEO of Reclaim and now director at the Roots programme. Ruth talks passionately about what motivates her, why policymakers in the North need to involve more women, and why we need to open our minds to different types of leader.
When we think of a CEO, everyone has an image. Most people immediately think of a white man, to be honest. But, as we're becoming more progressive, it might be a white woman. What people don't think of is of a northern black woman with a load of working class kids behind her. That's not what people think of when they think of CEO.
And also Ask the Hive. One problem, loads of advice. And this time, what to do when it's the office bake-off every single day.
And it might feel a bit weird at first, but I think eventually people will get used to it.
But first, let's catch up with the founder of Northern Power Women, Simone Roche MBE, with some news from HQ.
Well, September has been absolutely probably one of the busiest months I think we've ever had. We started off the month with the Premier League doing an event with Manchester City in the community and Manchester United hosting an event with the England goalkeeper Karen Bardsley and 23 14 to 18-year-olds on the start of the Women's Super League season. It was fantastic. We then followed that the next day with a live panel event with fellow fantastic Northern Power women Stacey Copeland and Lois McClure at the Generation W book launch. We then headed over to Leeds for number 4 in our role model series, talking about the art of selling yourself and storytelling. I'm really chuffed to bits to be added to the Heroes Women Role Model list by the Financial Times and Yahoo Finance, celebrating 190 women leaders, future leaders and advocates, so delighted to be in that again for the second year. I spoke over at the Northern Powerhouse Convention in front of 1,000 people at Rotherham. In fact, I think I was the warm-up for Boris, but that was all about a call to action and really asking our Northern Powerhouse community to commit to action, which we've been demonstrating during National Inclusion Week, where we've been shouting about some of the fantastic commitments and actions that Northern Power Women and our male advocates and agents of change have been doing for us. Thrilled to bits to start our partnership with the Cooperative Bank, running Inspiring Career Progression event, which we had 150 attendees, which was brilliant. Attended the launch of UA92, the new higher education founded by the class of 92 footballers, which was a really inspiring event and great to look at different forms of education. We've attended the National Diversity Awards and have also been a mentor at the Tech Up Women Programme, a residential weekend at Edge Hill University, which I'm thrilled to be a mentor for. So it's been absolutely fantastic. Also had the real pleasure to interview Sam White at the Innovate UK Building Success Conference. You can find clips of that on YouTube. And also took part in the Mills and Reeve Pro Manchester event about Mind Your Language, which has been fantastic. Wrapping off the month, attending the Northern Powerhouse dinner and a reception during the party conference. And you know what? October's not letting up. We're welcoming more sponsors to the Northern Power Women Awards, University of Manchester, EY, Liverpool Football Club, Manchester Airport, Cooperative Bank, Michael Page, and there's more opportunities for you, which we'd be delighted to get you involved, including our headline sponsorship is available. Next month, though, that will see us launch our Northern Power Futures Speed Mentoring Carousel on the International Day of the Girl at Tehidal High School over in Blackburn, and that's on the 11th of October. We'll also be continuing our role model series in Manchester with NatWest, and we're also starting our first mini-series podcast with a cooperative bank, and also we'll be heading over to the North East as well. So much going on, but you can keep update in our newsletter or get in touch with us at connect@northernpowerwomen.com. And finally, on a personal note, I would really like to dedicate this month's episode to Isabella, my Northern Power Nana. Thank you.
Thanks so much to the brilliant Simone, and just loads of love and respect to her in a very, very difficult and, as you heard, such a busy month. And yes, absolutely, to Isabella. Now, each month we get together somewhere in the north to chat, network and discuss some of the hottest topics around. And this time we were in Rotherham.
Well, what a morning it has been. We are here at the fantastic Magna Centre in the amazing Rotherham. And we're here recording Northern Power Women podcast episode 28 here as part of the Convention of the North. What a morning it's been. We've had hecklers, we've had Boris, I've even taken to the stage, done a little bit of unicycling. It's been amazing, but it's all been about Voices of the North. And today we've taken some of our fantastic participants, supporters and advocates of the conference to join us up here on the main stage to answer our normal 3 questions. So please give a lovely round of applause for our fantastic panellists. So our first panellist is Paul Corcoran, who is the Managing Director for Agent Marketing. Paul heads up and has been at the helm of the agency since it was established back in 2006. You just don't look old enough.
I feel old enough, trust me.
Paul is an advocate for entrepreneurship, enterprise and all things social. Combining Paul's passions for enterprise and people, Paul established Agent's sister social enterprise, the Agent Academy, which I love, developing young people's raw talents and guiding them into the marketing industry. I've been in this agency. It's fantastic, and it's the heart of everything we've been talking today, hasn't it, Paul? So welcome. Christine Gaskell is the Vice Chair of the NP11 and Chair of Cheshire and Warrington LEP. Christine spent most of her corporate career in the motor industry, holding a position on the Bentley Motors board for over 17 years. I hope you got a company car. Actively involved in promoting learning and skills, Christine was awarded an MBE in 2012 and was recognised again in 2019 when she was awarded a CBE for services to Cheshire and Warrington. Christine has been the chair of the LEP since 2011 and holds a portfolio of national appointments. You are very welcome. Eden Mayer is our final panellist today. She is a former Youth Parliament representing North Yorkshire and spoke, probably one of the first people to speak at the conference this morning, and was absolutely so amazing we had to whisk her onto this panel. 18 years old, Eden Mayer Shackleton is a former Member of Parliament representing North Yorkshire from 2017 to 19 and a first-year undergraduate at the University of Cambridge, no doubt. A big welcome to all our panellists. As we do on our Northern Power Women podcast, we like to start the conversations. So we have 3 questions and we're going to kick off. Are you concerned that the North will suffer disproportionately in the face of a no-deal Brexit? And how do we try to avoid it? Christine, I'm coming to you first.
I'm concerned about a no-deal Brexit, but I actually think in terms of whether we're disproportionately affected or not, I actually don't think that's the question. I think what business needs is certainty, and I think it's the uncertainty that we've got at the moment that is really causing an awful lot of businesses to delay investment decisions. And actually, what we've heard about this morning is that there are huge opportunities in the North, massive export opportunities, trade opportunities. We've talked about innovation. You look at McLaren, but these businesses need to feel that actually we invest this money in our future, we're making a good decision. As soon as we get a decision and we know where we're going, I think you'll then start to see that the economy will start to see that money flow again, but we need certainty.
Certainty is the answer. Paul, you're a small business, but actually punching well above your weight. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are around, certainly in my business, it is a worry. And as Christine rightly said, uncertainty leads to people delaying decisions and people thinking twice about the decisions that they're going to make for their business. But in order to remain confident, I think going back to the McLaren presentation earlier on today, I mean, 3 really great pieces of advice and guidance. The first was about making sure that we innovate. So it's about encouraging our people within our businesses, all of our people, regardless of their role, to come up with new ways of working and new ideas and supporting those ideas. I think the secondly was about making sure that we continue to collaborate, not just within our organisations, but across a multitude of different sectors and with lots of different people that perhaps we hadn't done before. And thirdly, it's about, something I'm incredibly passionate about, is making sure that we are really driving forward the skills agenda. And we're looking outside of the normal institutions and organisations to help support that. And for me, if we invest in young people, or we invest in people returning to work, or people wanting to change their roles, that is good. The greatest asset that we've got is going to be in our people, and for me, that's where the real opportunity lies.
And I think we're all, it's all about harnessing, looking at the whole sky, isn't it? Yeah. Really we need every single part of our talent pipeline, like you say, our returners, people coming back into work for different reasons. We're living longer, we're working longer, so it's so critical. But you talked heavily about innovation, you talked about future talent, and so we've got one of those future talent right here on the stage you spoke so eloquently this morning. Eden, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think at this, historic moment of change, rather than looking at the possible detriment that might come with the risks of Brexit, I think it's really important to look to the future, and a future of opportunity nonetheless, whether that be in trade, whether that be in education. That's what needs to be the driving force of these Brexit preparations. What opportunities are there for the North in particular, rather than what are the risks and, the anxiety of what might happen. Instead, look at what we can do rather than the subjunctive of what may or may not happen.
So it's about looking at what the art of the possible is. And earlier this week, we've seen the Yellow Hammer report coming out, the leaked report about the sort of the doom and gloom and end of the world. And, do you think the fears have been overinflated? What do you think?
Well, but if you look at any business, we all do risk management. Mm-hmm. And, it would be remiss not to imagine the worst case scenario. Every business does that, but hopefully you'll never get there, but you might as well have thought about it. So I really think it's more about some of the things we've been saying. Focus on the things that we can do. Focus on the difference that we can make. The great thing about this conference, and the thing that I'm going to take away, is the positivity. Everybody's been talking about opportunity. Everybody's been talking about the future and an exciting future, and that's what I want to take away. It's so easy to talk about all the negative things, and what has been great about today is we've really turned that round and talked about all the positives and all the way we can make things better.
It's that whole we can, isn't it? And I think right at the start, is it Dan Jarvis talked about what would you call a collective of Northerners? And you could almost feel everyone's on the break. So I might come to you. I might come in the audience as well later. You might come and ask what you think a collective of Northerners sounds like as well. But I've definitely sensed that as well today. I think it's so easy, isn't it? What Ruth was talking about the red coat. There's always that image of the stark backyard with the sort of the ragged little girl. That's what the North is. That is absolutely not what the North is. You've got 1,000 people here today, and that's just positivity, action, can do. A new report has shown that Northern millennials are less likely to live into their 50s than those in the South. It's 2019, so many parts of the North are thriving. So why hasn't the North-South divide gone away? We're talking about millennials, so now I'm coming to you, and you're not millennial. You have a whole other Eden.
The issue that I personally have with the ideology of the North-South divide is I think it's more about perception and attitude. Yes, I don't think we can overlook that the North does need more funding, it does need increases in opportunity, we do need to eradicate inequalities, but I think also we need to look again at the advantages and the benefits and the opportunities that there are for young people and for everybody living in the North. So I think it's a case of not thinking of ourselves as a separate group of people in the North who are disadvantaged compared to other people, but thinking actually, right, what can I do to improve where I live, to make myself have the better opportunities and to ensure that I have the bright future that everybody else is entitled to in this country. So for me, I think it's more about the ambition and the attitude of the can-do attitude, not the self-pity. I know that sounds awful, but we do need to just say, look, we're in the North, that's a really positive thing, and actually rather than taking it as a detriment, take it as something that makes us a little bit more unique.
Take the opportunities again. So you're not worried, you don't see a North-South divide?
I'm not worried. It's never really hindered me thus far. But I think still much needs to be done. There is definitely, when you talk to different people all around the country, everybody's well aware of the fact that there are differences between people living in the North and people living in the South, whether that be in opportunities, in transport, in education. So I think there are things that need to be evened out, but we shouldn't let that get in the way of our prospects.
What do you think, Christine? You've worked for a very high-profile motor organisation, you know?
I think if anyone who's travelled around this country, there are plenty of places of deprivation in the South as well as in the North. And I really don't think it's a useful argument because it turns us into victims. Yes, of course. One of the things that I think has changed over the last few years, we talk a lot more now about inclusivity and about making it a good place for everyone. Let's stop focusing on what they've got down in the South and let's focus on making what we've got here the best it possibly can be, because that's something we can do something about. We can't really do too much about what's happening elsewhere in the country. And, you end up with this polarisation. Yes, we are different, but we've got an awful lot in common. We're not such a big country.
And we talked this morning, one of the Dragon's Den pictures, we were talking about the sense of place. And, up on the screen, you've got this amazing place here, the Magna Centre here. On the screen was the giants in Liverpool flooding the streets, the Tour de Yorkshire. There's so much that goes on across this North that, wipes the floor, really. And I think you're right. Let's just keep focused on where we are. What do you think, Paul? You deal with this amazing.
Yeah,
you talked about the agency and the people.
Certainly, for our business, I think we've just got better in the North at communicating what we do and how well we do it. And I think, a characteristic of ours for many years has been being brilliant but hiding it under a bushel. And never really communicating what we do and how we do it and how we are distinctly different in the way that we deliver. And I think, certainly now, 60% of our clients, and we look after all the major government agencies, are all in London. And why do they come to us as opposed to, the huge multinational agencies that they could work with, is because they want that northern service. And that's a real differentiator for us, because actually they get to work with the people who pitch the work. They get to get their work delivered by a name who stays with the company. They get to come and be part of our culture. And actually, if you look at a team member of mine who was with me for a long old time and then relocated down to London, in their agency the staff churn is 50%. Mine is less than 5%.
Wow.
And the reason being is because actually what we do is we've got a northern culture, which is about celebrating people, making it a warm and welcoming environment, really, really, really focusing in on and supporting people. And then that's contagious, because actually what our clients are seeing is they're building relationships up with us. So the contract, which is one project, then turns into numerous projects. And the client really enjoys that continuous development of that relationship, as opposed to it being transactional because there's a new team member coming in time and time
It becomes
again.
family.
And that's the difference. I think what we've got to be really proud of is what culturally makes us us. Because for me, you know, often we talk about innovation. That innovation must be about tech. It must be about digital. It must be about discovering brand new ways of working or new products or materials. And of course that is. But certainly I believe that innovation comes from the real intrinsic ways of behaving and living. And innovation for me is about welcoming someone into our office, you know, having people that can, you know, we have an open door policy for our clients. They don't have to make appointments to come in and work in our space. For us, being innovative is about simply saying, come in and be part of us. You know, we all sit together, so we all collaborate naturally. And so you have strategy people working with creative people, working with digital people and campaigning people. For me, that's innovation, but that has come from being in our place and being Northerners, if you will.
And I see your feed, and I think, you know, the simplicity of the deal that you make on people's birthdays.
Yeah.
You know, that's that sense of, you know, pride in people and stuff. So we're not worried on the panel here today that our millennials are not going to live until 50.
I think it sits outside of that. I think, you know, bear in mind in London, you know, and certainly my friends and colleagues who are in a similar industry to me, their work-life balance is not balanced. You know, they're working really long hours. They feel immense stress because there's a constant line of talent coming behind them who will take their jobs, and often for less money. You know, the work well-being culture isn't where it is in London. Here, I think we're doing some really fantastic things. I think, you know, you look at, you know, businesses that see the importance of investing in, you know, mental health and general health resources. So, for example, in our team, we do mindfulness. They get a monthly massage. We bring people into, and that's really important.
Northern Power team, don't get the ideas.
Yeah. That is key, because now what we're finding is the people who are coming to agent for jobs aren't just coming for the salary packages and the client portfolio. They're coming because of balance. And if we can start to bring some of those things to the table and be known as the North, where it's just the best place to work, then actually that's really important. That's where we start to really infiltrate that, you know, some of the stats that we're seeing here.
Absolutely.
And that's where I do think the millennials are different to my generation, because they want more, they expect more, they have a holistic approach to that work. And it's not just a work-life balance. They want a great place to work, a great place to live, but a great place to have fun as well. Yeah. And actually, they're looking for the whole deal, which we never even thought about.
And I think that links into what we heard earlier, actually, about, well, what is a Northern identity? And you can't take a photo of Northern identity, but I think it's that ethos of fraternity and resilience that really defines living and working in the North.
Fraternity and resilience. I love that. Just a show of hands. Normally I'd like to come out into the audience and do a bit of lunging this, but there's a big stage here. Just a show of hands. Who feels there is a North-South divide? Who still feels that it's there? Half the audience. I suppose it's one of those, what do you mean about, is it about this? Is it about skills? Is it about education? What is that about? We always talk about this starting a conversation. If you have any questions that you would like to ask or get our panel involved in on future podcasts, please do connect with us at podcast@northernpowerwomen.com and join in our social conversation at North Power Women. Oh, final question, right? We're back to another real kind of northern powerhouse one now. We learnt last month that HS2 will be delayed by up to 5 years. Disaster for our region, or the chance to kick it into the long grass.
Please do not let us kick this into the long grass. We have been talking about this for too long, and it is something that just has to happen. Not just HS2, but also Northern Power Rail. We need both. We were talking earlier on when we were in our warm-up about how you travel in the north. I live in Cheshire. I regularly go from Manchester over to Leeds and Sheffield. It is faster for me to get to London, and I'm guaranteed a seat. To get from where I live near Manchester to Leeds or Sheffield, it doesn't matter even if I have a first-class ticket, you stand all the way. Now, I only do that every few weeks. There are people, lots of them millennials, who are doing this on a daily basis. This is their commute to work. It is an absolute disgrace. One, in terms of the amount of time it's taking, so how inefficient is that? The level of customer service, you're buying a ticket and you have to stand all the way. And then when these people do that twice a day and they get to work, how do they feel at the end of the day? It's, so I'm sorry, this is non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned, and we've better get on with it. We need to be laying track, we need to be building trains, and we need to be getting it done ASAP.
I would absolutely agree. I mean, I think there's something about this. I think it's not just the level of service and the infrequency or the frequency of us being let down by the system. It's the price. So if you look at small businesses who are based outside of London, so for example, a couple of weeks back we got a request to pitch in London, and in order to get down and be there in London for 9:30 and to book in less than a week, it was costing us £400 return. And actually when you think about delivering, you've got to bear that in mind, that it's great that we can get there, but can we afford to get there?
And I think that's a big thing. And don't get me on trains. I think it was after the Northern Powerhouse Summit last year in Newcastle. Myself, Steve Rotherham, and Andy Burnham. Yeah, and we all stood up, didn't we? We stood up from Newcastle, and it was just. And not only that, it was. Don't even get me on the toilets. The toilets were out of action.
And these are people. But some people have to do that every single day.
And if we're going on to this is the future. Our young people. This is how they're going to. We're working longer, living longer. I mean, seriously, I really want a teleporter, but I didn't hear the Prime Minister talk about that this morning.
Well, the other thing is, I do also think it then affects people's choices as to where they live. So we're actually denying ourselves an awful lot of talent, because there might be the ideal job. You look at that commute and you think, I don't think so, because I'm not prepared to do that every day. And what business can afford for any member of staff to say, one day out of 5, I probably won't be in on time?
Eden, do you want to kick this HS2 into the long grass?
I think it's very important for the North as a whole and for young people to improve transport links across the country. So I think it is a vital part of innovation, which we've talked a lot about. But I think also, coming on to the 2 points made today, is that local transport is actually really important as well in Yorkshire. And the whole North as a whole, it's such a vast region. I'm from North Yorkshire. It can take 3 hours to get from one side of North Yorkshire to the other. So I think that's something that we need to look into. And I think that's perhaps where we see the North-South divide a little bit more, if we're going to talk about that. In London, they have the Oyster card and a very distinct mode of travel for young people. You come up to the North, and whether you're in Manchester, Sheffield, Harrogate, or wherever in the North, there's a different system for the travel of young people. And actually, the services also vary greatly between whereabouts in the North you are. So I think we need a uniform system and something that's much more efficient locally as well as nationally.
And this is something you talk with your friends. Will this impact on your career decisions and where you go to work?
I think it is something that many people will bear in mind, but I think as we start to think about being green in the future and looking towards renewable energy, more people are trying to use trains and getting off the roads and forgetting about cars and trying to find renewable ways of transport. So I think moving forwards, more people will look to public transport rather than the motorways.
It's an interesting statistic. I think it's something like 40% of under 27-year-olds have not got a driving licence.
Wow.
So they're choosing not to drive. And that's a good thing in terms of our green credentials and sustainability. But if that's the case, then our public transport has got to be as good as it can be. Lots of people will have travelled in Europe. It's just fantastic. And we come here and it's lacking.
I mean, you were talking today, just about going down for pitches. Sort of for me and Emma to get over here today, we are carpooling. Where's Nick? I'm giving a shout out for Nick from Nexus Protect, who sent me a message and he says, "I'm going. You can jump in my car." So we are very grateful for sharing the car. But it is that challenge. How many people in the audience here travel daily by train? Okay. How many by car? Keep your hands up if you carpool. Yeah. Is that because it's not easy? It's not easy to do that, or because you're in different parts every day? A bit of both. Wow. Did we come up with a collective name for Northerners?
I like Endeavour, which was Dan's name, mainly because, of course, that was the Christian name of Morse. And, of course, Morse came from the north.
There we go. Paul, you're a creative agency. You must have already built a brand on this, yeah?
Yeah, no, I picked up the pride. I think that there's a sense of, for me, there's been real pride in the room today, and a real sense of joined up ambition. And for me, that's what
An endeavour of Northerners, a pride of Northerners. Eden, no pressure.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not as creative as that, but I would second endeavour. I think that's a nice way to sum up the attitude that people today at this conference have had.
Someone in the audience, and there's a massive room in Rotherham, someone must have a massive creative idea about a Northerner collective. Yes, you have to shout it out. A rebellion of Northerners. It's a rebellion because of the historic nature, because of the trade unions. We think rebellion. Endeavour, pride, and a rebellion. I love that. Listen, I want to thank our fantastic panellists for joining in today's conversation on Northern Power Women. Please give them a great round of applause. I want to thank all of you for coming and popping into our fringe session today during the Convention of the North. It's been a great day so far. I'm looking forward to this afternoon sessions. Please do stay connected at northpowerwomen.com. If you'd like to have anybody that you think have any questions throughout, please do join in the conversation, and we will see you next month. Thank you so much, Rotherham. Woo!
Big thank you again to our wonderful panel and to the Magna Centre as well for hosting us, and to you if you came along to take part. We love to see you when we're out and about, so do keep your eye on Twitter at North Power Women for details of our next recording. And of course, if you'd like to host us, we would love to come. Just get in touch, podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Now for the big interview, and this month you're going to hear from the brilliant Ruth Ibegbuna, a member of the Northern Power Women Power List. A former teacher, Ruth founded and ran Reclaim, an organisation focused on youth leadership, for many successful years. She stepped down last year and has subsequently set up the Roots programme, an organisation passionate about social change. I asked Ruth what being Northern meant to her.
Being Northern is probably, aside from being black and being a woman, the most important part of my identity. I think I've grown up being incredibly proud of coming from the North, and my whole family are Londoners. My mum's London, my dad's London, my grandparents Londoners, and my parents came up north and conceived, and there I was. So in my own family, I was this token Northerner, and so I think because of that I had to be a bit kind of louder and prouder about where I was from to combat the fact that everyone else is from London. So yeah, I've always been an insanely proud Northerner, and I've always been insane about the fact that I think that the North doesn't get what it's due.
Who were your role models growing up? Who inspired you?
Oh, great role models. Oh, I was such a do-gooder, you know. If there was any kind of civil rights or social justice warrior, then I was probably, Rosa Parks. When I was a kid, it was Winnie Mandela, actually. It was Winnie Mandela who, when I was a kid, was really fighting for justice in South Africa. And then as I became older, there was a guy called Clive Stafford Smith, and he used to fight to help reprieve people on death row who'd had no legal representation, and I thought he was an incredible guy.
Can really see how this is fed into your career completely. But
yeah, professional do-gooder, always have been. Since I was at primary school, I was that kid, always.
Well, you started your career in teaching. What drove you to that? What inspired you to become a teacher?
My mother inspired me to become a teacher. I was living in Wales trying to make it as a poet, and my mum basically got the application form for Manchester University for me to do teacher training And I mean, not quite applied for me, but more or less did, in a bid to make me have a proper job and stop dreaming of my poetry career. And that's what inspired me to be a teacher. And also the fact that I ended up going to 5 different schools for lots of reasons, and I'd never once had a black teacher ever in 5 different schools, which I thought was quite shocking. So there was something for me about being a black woman stood at the front of a class that was important.
What did you love about that?
I loved teaching. And I didn't realise, I mean, everything I've done in my career, if anyone asks me what I do, I still say that I'm a teacher. It was the best job I ever had. I think just being there with those young people and knowing you've got the responsibility for the next hour to either kind of capture their imaginations or bore them to death, and just the creativity of finding ways into all those young minds. So, you know, you've got some young people that arrive and they want to learn, but you've got some young people who arrive and they've not slept and they've got nightmares going on at home, and trying to make that young person have a good experience in that hour as well is just as important. So, yeah, I teaching was an absolute gift. I loved it.
But you left, of course, and you set up Reclaim in 2007. First of all, for anyone who isn't aware of Reclaim and what you did with Reclaim, can you explain?
So, yeah, I left teaching after, I think, 7 years. Nothing to do with the kids and all to do with the bureaucracy behind it, but that's probably another interview. And I set up Reclaim, and Reclaim was about a leadership programme for young people from working class communities. So I often find in the UK, when we talk about leadership, we are looking at certain communities, or we're looking at certain schools. And actually, my experience of working with young people in Moss Side is that there were loads of leaders there, and yet society's not expecting them to be leaders. So how do you get young people who might not be from the most advantaged circumstances to understand that they've got the right to walk into a room and be seen and heard, and for them to decide on the changes they want to make in their communities and in their own lives? So we did a lot of leadership training of 12 and 13-year-olds from various working class communities across Greater Manchester.
I mean, you must have just witnessed life changes all the time.
I did, and I still am. I mean, those young people that we worked with back in 2007 and 2008 are now working, and they're out there in the world. Some of them are having children themselves, and you know, I meet up with them for coffee, and just seeing how they've developed, and how they've remembered some of the things that we discussed and we talked about is it's a big source of pride, actually.
I mean, incredible pride and huge inspiration during those times. But I'm really aware as well that when you are working with people on a day-to-day basis who are so disadvantaged, who are some of the most disadvantaged people in society, how do you deal with the disappointments that you must have felt? Because it's quite often so amplified, aren't they, by the challenges that these people have faced? And you were dealing with that on a day-to-day basis as well, the injustice of society.
Yeah, I think it's something as I'm getting older, I'm learning to balance better. I think for maybe about 10 years, I was carried away on this kind of fiery voyage to fight injustice. And so almost the more injustice we faced alongside those young people, the more fired up we were to fight it. And I think a lot of people who lead social action programs or CEOs can be buoyed along by that, but after a while that can consume you, that can burn you up.
Yeah.
And as I'm getting older, it's now about, okay, how are you a bit more clever about this? How can you still be as fired up but not let it consume you, not work 80 hours a week, not work every weekend, not give away your own life in order to try and save other people's? And that's the kind of space I've been in for the past few years.
You won so many awards during your time at Reclaim, and for example, you were named as one of the top 6 female change makers internationally. You were in the Sunday Times as one of the most 500 influential people in the UK. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but yet you called yourself a reluctant CEO. Why did you do that?
I was, and I was right in that, because CEO carries with it a lot of expectations, external expectations of what a CEO is. When we think of a CEO, everyone has an image. Most people immediately think of a white man, to be honest. But, as we're becoming more progressive, it might be a white woman. What people don't think of is of a northern black woman with a load of working class kids behind her. That's not what people think of when they think of CEO. So immediately when you step into that space, you're having to deal with all the nonsense of negotiating other people's expectations of what a CEO is and what a CEO should be. And I was just aware of the baggage that title carried, and I was disinterested in many of the trappings of being a CEO that other people might be interested in. So I wasn't particularly interested in the power of the title. I wasn't particularly interested in, being able to say I am a CEO. I was more interested in, I want to be able to do this work and remain connected to the young people. And once you get that CEO title, there's an expectation that you'll spend more time in meetings and more time behind your desk than you will talking to 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
And that was what I was reluctant to give up.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned there about, you have the image of a CEO, you think of a white man, you might think of a white woman, you never think of a black woman. Obviously, Northern Power Women are really passionate about gender diversity, passionate about supporting people. There is an issue, of course, as well in the diversity that it isn't just about gender. There are other aspects that also play in. And I wonder, as a black woman, do you feel supported enough, or do you feel your voice is heard enough in the space of women-only spaces alone? Or actually, how can white women support BAME women more?
That's a really good question. And if I'm completely honest, no, I don't. I feel that too many spaces that are for women are dominated too much by white women who don't allow enough time for those who have different experiences to be heard. And it can become a very, very frustrating and draining experience, constantly having to feel that even in those spaces you are other. And it's a difficult conversation. It's a difficult conversation that I've had in a lot of feminist groups, in terms of, well, what if other people's experience as of being a woman is entirely different to yours, contradicting your experience? Are you willing to give enough time and space and respect to those people who've got a different story to tell? And I think as women we can do far better to allow different voices to lead.
So it's just bearing that in mind, but adding that to your thought process when you are, say, a white woman in a women-only space, that everyone isn't, just because you are women, you don't have necessarily a shared experience.
You don't. I mean, one of the things I think is really interesting, I was talking to someone who was talking about Trump and talking about Trump's polling and saying that when Trump was elected, 52% of women voted for Trump. And I went, 52% white women. And there was a silence, and it was like, oh, actually, yeah, true. It was something like 97% of black women did not vote for Trump.
Yeah.
But the presumption when you say women is that all women. No, there's differences in that, and you need to understand the nuance and the difference, and that race and class and all those things play a really important part in navigating through the experience of being a woman.
I was talking to, on a previous episode of the Northern Power Women podcast, to Udi Archibong. She's Professor of Diversity at Bradford University. And I was talking to her about the fact that it's not enough to put a woman in a room and go, therefore we now have diversity, or, a BAME woman in a room and go, therefore we have diversity, because actually someone physically being in the room doesn't necessarily give them a voice.
No, not at all. I mean, I've joked for years that I'm everyone's dream panelist. It's true. I am black. I am a woman for a long. I mean, I'm over 40 now, but for a long time I was under 40. I'm from the north. I run a working class charity. It was ridiculous. People used to clamber to get me to be on panels because it's like you've got 5 boxes immediately ticked. But me being on a panel as a black woman, and everyone else on the panel is a white man, is diversity addressed? Of course it's not addressed. No. Yeah. You've just got someone maybe giving a different perspective on the end, but the majority perspective and the one that flies is not your experience. So no, I just think now the idea that we have panels that are all male, the idea that we have workshops run by all men, a lot of my frustration at being a northern woman is that there are too many men running the north. Where are the incredible women when it comes to solutions for the north and policies for the north? There's not enough women being consulted, and there's not enough women at the forefront of change for the north.
Well, this is something I know we discuss a lot here on the Northern Power Women podcast, so it's great to hear that coming from you. I want to talk about the fact that early this year, you left Reclaim. I mean, it was obviously your passion. It's something that was your life for more than a decade. How hard a decision was that to leave?
It was a really hard decision to leave, and I probably should have left a couple of years earlier, to be honest. I was so... It was my life, and that was why I left. You know, I recognised I turned 40. I was just like, this job is something that I will love till the day I die. You know, I couldn't be prouder of the work that I did at Reclaim. But at the same time, there's also that realisation that you're entitled to a life as well. And maybe I was struggling to do both. I'd given my whole life and soul to Reclaim, and then I thought, actually, you know, I would like to go for a glass of wine on a Thursday night. You know, it might be quite nice to see what it's like to have a social life as well. So and also recognising that it moved into its next phase and it didn't need me. It really didn't need me. It needed a different style of leader. And it's got a great CEO now. And it was time for me to move on and do other things. And I think one of the things I teach you about being a leader is, you know, everyone's about how to be a leader and how to be courageous and all that stuff. No one teaches you how to leave. And so leaving is actually the hardest part, not starting something up. But it was the right decision.
It seems, looking at your career and the way you've moved on and you've changed your life, that you're not afraid of change. Or is it that you are afraid but you do it anyway?
I'm not afraid of change. I'm not afraid of change at all. It's funny, you know, I've talked very openly about the fact that when I was 30, I was diagnosed with MS, and it's something I talk about publicly. Yeah. And with that diagnosis, a lot of the fear that I used to carry for various things went. It was almost like that was my biggest fear. So once that arrived in my life, and I learned to negotiate with that fear, it was almost like, don't be foolish about everything else. So change doesn't freak me out. You know, the idea of meeting new people, giving speeches, all those things that beforehand I might have been more nervous about. It was a question of, oh, come on, just step up. You can do this. So no, I don't get worried by change at all.
So what advice do you give to someone who does perhaps want to change their life but is fearful, because it is a frightening thing to do?
It's terrifying to do it, but for me, the bigger fear is looking back in 40 years and feeling unfulfilled, and feeling that I didn't try, and feeling that I stayed in something that didn't make me happy because I was scared of what was on the other side. And the thing is, you can always step back into something. You know, if people are worried about stepping into change, set yourself a year's time frame. I'm gonna travel for a year. I'm gonna live abroad for a year. If I like it, I will stay. If I don't, I will come back. You know, you don't have to make a change fundamental to everything. Yeah. But I think to not feel fulfilled, for me, is a far greater fear.
So tell me about the Roots programme. This is your new passion. You're director of this. Tell me about it.
So the Roots programme, this was another reason why I left Reclaim, to be honest. I mean, there'd been the Brexit referendum, which has gone on forever and ever. And I just felt like I was spending half my life in very kind of moneyed London spaces, looking for money for the charity, and half my life in kind of working class communities in the north. And it wasn't that things even necessarily went down the Leave Remain lines, but the absolute kind of toxic discourse between the two often, and the lack of understanding just drove me crazy. And I would be in business rooms in London with people talking about kind of these working class northern communities where people didn't know what they were voting for, you know. And I'm just like, have you been? Have you ever been? Have you got any northern working class friends? Do you know people in the north? No. Well, before you cast aspersions about, you know, a whole region, a whole swathe of the country, maybe go and spend time there and see how people live, see what decisions people have made, see what challenges people face that are different to your own, and then invite those people back to understand your life and the decisions that you've made. And maybe you'll understand that we're not all living the same UK, and that the UK is a very different experience for very different people, and to have some more compassion, empathy for people who feel different to yourself. And that's basically what Roots is about. So it's cultural exchanges from people who've got very, very different backgrounds. Just go and spend time, suspend judgment, just listen, learn from people who are different to yourself, understand their lives, and then invite them back with parity to spend time, meet your family, understand the choices that you've made. And then after that, work with that person to look at what would be a better vision for the UK. Because right now it feels like a really bleak, hopeless place. And I think part of that is because there's a lack of connectivity, and people feel that, you know, I don't even understand what this country is anymore. So that's what we're trying to do.
Fantastic. One huge change in your life isn't enough for you, Ruth, as we as we now know. So you also have another huge change. You become a mum this year as well. And another chapter begins. How has that affected your attitude towards work-life balance as well, becoming a mum?
I've adopted a very, very spirited 10-month baby girl, and she's amazing. She's changed my life in every single way. I haven't slept much. It's quite hard to dream of changing the world when you've had 2 hours sleep. But she's also fired me up in a very different way. You know, I didn't know how I would change, and actually, you know, I look at her little face and I'm completely consumed with how amazing and perfect she is. But at the same time, I'm also consumed with the fact that this world isn't good enough for her, and it doesn't feel like the UK is good enough for her right now. So I've got one foot in kind of being the best mum I can be, but one foot in terms of we need to do better and the country needs to be in a better place, because this is not fair for children growing up. So I'm trying to kind of wear both hats, which is quite difficult. But yeah, she's made my life a billion times better.
Thank you so much to the brilliant Ruth Ibegbuna. Some brilliant insight and also great advice from her there as well. I'm really excited to see what her new project, the Roots programme, can achieve. Whose life and career would you like to know more about? Do let us know. You can email podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Now, it's time for Ask the Hive, a place where you let us know a problem you're facing, and the brilliant Northern Power Women Hive Mind comes to the rescue with some stellar advice. This month, it's all about too much cake.
This sounds ridiculous, but everyone brings in cakes and biscuits into work all the time, and I hate it. Every day there's something and I feel like a killjoy not eating it, as everyone oohs and ahs. Then they have a go at me for not bringing anything. It's making me really uncomfortable. We're only a small team. Help!
Right, well, I guess it depends on what her situation is, or what the context is of this office baking business. I faced something similar where I was on a low-carb push to lose some weight, and I just let people know that that's why I wouldn't be eating cake and biscuits, but I would be very happy to bring something else in. Might be, you know, some fruit or some drinks, or maybe, you know, some chopped up veg or something. So I guess it'll depend on why she feels she doesn't want to eat the cake, but I wouldn't be pressured to do something, to be honest, if that's the case. I don't think that's right.
It is a difficult situation when you're in a small team and somebody, you know, people are bringing cakes and everything, and you don't want to eat the cake and you don't want to partake in that. It's quite easy to maybe lie about things, not lie, but be not quite truthful about what you want to do. I work with somebody who, if somebody brings cakes in, he'll take a piece of cake and he'll leave the room. I always presumed he was going to eat at his desk or something, but I've realised he just didn't want to eat the cake. So he would take it, either put it in the bin or somebody else would eat it. I know he's very health conscious and I respect him for that. So maybe that's the way out of it. But also, you could be honest with people and say, I don't really like eating cake. I'm health conscious, or it might be something to do with not wanting to develop an illness, or and it might feel a bit weird at first, but I think eventually people will get used to it. And maybe if there's another event or a celebration or a birthday, which is when cakes come in, you could bring some fruit in. A fruit platter is just as good as a nice cake.
What about having a focus group or something within the organisation? You know, because she could feel pressurised and, you know, sort of bullied a bit, but actually have a bit of a team meeting. I don't know how many employees, but if it's a small company, have some sort of forum and ask for ideas and have an agenda. Just, it doesn't have to be long, but to try and help her move forward. I think that would be the thing that I could recommend.
In this situation, I would look at maybe trying something else out, so bringing something that's your interest and bringing that into the workplace, and trying to get the team involved, because obviously you don't want to feel on the outside. So if baking's not your thing, then try something else.
Okay, so what I would do in this situation is either to join in, maybe bring something in that you feel comfortable with so that you feel like you're taking part in it. But, whether that be fruit or something that's, really healthy, if that's the sort of issue that you have with it. Or you could try just speaking to them and saying, actually, this isn't something that, you're not a baker and, you celebrate the fact that they are, but it's just something that you're not going to do. And, maybe that they would completely understand that. I know I would if it was my team.
Thank you so much if you got in touch with your advice this month. If you've got a question you need some help with, do let us know. Send us an email. You can stay anonymous if you want, but send it to podcasts@northernpowerwomen.com. Now, next month, I want to hear more of your shout-outs, please. Those unsung women and men across the North who you feel deserve some extra credit in their work. Do let us know who you want to trumpet. Tell us their name, where they work, and why they're great. Record your message on your phone, and you can email it to us, please, podcast@northernpowerwomen.com, and you're going to make their day. Alternatively, do come and record it at our next live panel event. All the details, as I mentioned before, will be posted on Twitter @NorthPowerWomen or on Instagram @NorthernPowerWomen. Well, there we go. For yet another month of great stories, advice and ideas. Huge thank you to you for listening. Please do leave us some feedback or a review wherever you're listening. And do, of course, always spread the word. We would love more people to come in and join the conversation. Save the date. The next episode arrives for you on Monday, November the 4th. Until then, this is the Northern Power Women podcast. I'm Sam Walker, and this has been a What Goes On media production for Northern Power Women.